Let's create a pivotal impact. Friends in the industry. In today's episode, I'm really excited as I get to speak with Angela Thomson, an over the road professional that actually recently became a driver trainer, which I think is super awesome. So, I personally believe we all have the ability to impact the life for the better, which is why I'm excited about my conversation with Angela. She shares her journey, but also she shares her passion to help impact her students' life. So I encourage you to connect with Angela and Caribou Driver Training if you're in the Caribou area, if you're looking to obtain your commercial license. But also, if you're in a position where you just have questions and you're like, I need to speak to someone that's just going to give me accurate advice or mentorship, you can learn more by visiting cariboudrivertraining.com. So, for this first time you've ever checked out a Truck Focus podcast, I do welcome you to our community. And I thank you so much for taking the time to listen, as well as to our dedicated listeners. Thank you so much for your investment in time. So I encourage you to like this episode, subscribe to the channel, but also share it out because, again, there's a lot of value in today's episode when Angela just really talks about her journey, all of her experiences, and how she's creating an impact in the life of so many now in a new position as a driver trainer. Well, let's get to it. One. Angela, honestly, welcome to the Truck Focus podcast. Super excited for a couple things today. First off, I learned of you through your group on social, which I think is awesome. But on our first call a couple weeks ago, a couple things that really stood out is you really care about people and you care about the people side of our industry, you care about the success of others. But obviously, you are a woman, and being a woman in industry, your passion to advocate for other women to get involved in industry, I just think is phenomenal. So really excited to talk today just in regards to your story as an over-the-road professional, now as a driver trainer, and just kind of anything and everything in between. So welcome to the podcast.
Morning, Josh. Thank you. Yeah, it's been great talking with you the last while. I've learned a lot.
Awesome.
Didn't really realize what I was getting myself into, honestly. Going from trucking to training, it's kind of like a whole nother family in itself. It's been really, really uplifting, however, because I've met some really positive people so far that have seemed to have just stuck with me already, which is amazing. So I've already got this like huge basket of people that I can call on for help. So that really impresses me.
That's awesome. Yeah, it just shows the strength of the community. And I
Yeah.
think once you speak the language and you're totally absolved in what is driver training and who's, what's, it's really nice to see just you're able to flourish in that environment instead of being intimidated. I can't ask that question. I don't know that answer. So that's nice to hear.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. So to start us off, why don't you kind of describe a little bit about yourself and highlight just some key points of your experience in the industry so far?
Okay, so I was raised in the North Cariboo in central interior BC, which is a logging community. So I was raised up with loggers. And mentioned this to you before, but there was a time when I was so naive, I believed that all dads were log truck drivers. And so when I was little, I would sit in school and all the log trucks drove by the school on the Nasco Highway. And I remember looking out the window and knowing the sound of my dad's logging truck. And I would wait because he would come pick me up sometimes if he was done early or I got to go for trips. So um, we were small community and we were a very close knit community. So the thing was that the kids got to go to work with their dads. We got to learn about logging and trucking, and that was normal to us. So I didn't think it was odd for me to want to do those things. And, we were typical rednecks. We shot guns, we spent a lot of time outdoors. So this was very natural for me to want to do and be involved in. I'm very independent and I really like being outdoors. So that's a huge part of who I am. I think that's the key point why I thrived in trucking because being stuck inside all the time does not suit me well. So I was trying to think going into my older years, what could I do to keep contributing to the transportation industry? Yeah. So definitely wanting to make a difference. And I noticed right off the forefront that there wasn't very many of us girls out there. So the thing that I like the most about, well, the thing that's made me the most interested in everything that I'm doing is um, from a young age, I wanted to be right involved. So I wanted to be on the radio calling my miles. I wanted to know how everything worked. And I was very inquisitive, a very keen learner. And I remember still today when I told my dad, "Oh, I want to be a truck driver." He didn't have a very like positive look on his face. Like it was almost like he didn't want that life for me because trucking is very hard. Trucking is very hard mentally and physically, especially for girls. It can be. Not saying that in a discouraging tone at all. It does take a level of mental toughness for sure. And it's definitely not for everybody. I've met a lot of people over the years that have come into the industry and just went, this is absolutely not for me. Absolutely. Um, in regards to how many years I've been in the industry, I could easily say since I was a small child, but I started actually driving in the bush when I was in my teens, off highway,
Yeah.
and lots of trips to Bella Coola off the coast of Bella Coola. Like that was the biggest one for me when I had my learners was low bed up and down the Bella Coola hill. And again, I didn't understand the different levels. So to me, there was no, hey, this is harder than other styles of trucking because that was all I knew. And that being said, I still feel that way. I feel like if you have the will to learn it and you're going to like find someone that wants to mentor you properly, yeah, you can do anything you want to do.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's an incredible backstory to get you to where you are for a number of reasons. And equipment was very different when we were still in school, and you would have been listening to your dad's truck roar down the highway versus today. It's a sorry, yeah, there's a very different approach. So I could only imagine his face in, I'm sure in his heart, he was really, really happy. But I could see his face being like, "Are you sure? Like, you're smart. You're quick. Are you nuts? Like, that's really
Yeah.
cool." Yeah, but yeah, learning. I have a more experience. I have no actual experience aside from being really close with former loggers. I'm not a logger myself, so I've heard plenty of horror stories, nasty grades, really interesting switchbacks, and graders going doing fancy stuff to help you get down a hill. But I always tried to compare my experience in oil to like when I'm hearing those stories, and I'm like, oil is a beast, but logging is a beast. I think logging is probably quote unquote tough, probably the top three, if not the toughest in like transportation because of the terrain, the weather, the wildlife, and then yeah, just trying to navigate 18 plus wheels down some interesting highways is very interesting. So I guess you actually have a lot more wheels than that. So I think that's really cool. And I think the fact that you've been able to stay motivated and encouraged, even through the hard times, I'm sure there's been lots of tire kicking, swearing, and I just want to go blow stuff up moments, as well as, man, this was a great day moment. So it's just, yeah, I applaud you for the effort and the consistency, but I also applaud your dad, because if your dad didn't have the passion that he did, I don't think you would be as, this is just my obviously reflection of what you've shared so far on camera and off. Having parents that are really passionate about what they do really does install that type of belief in us as kids. So knowing that, okay, if when my dad can do it, I can do it, and I want to call out miles and stuff, I think that's really awesome that you're able to experience that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, my dad's the key player in all of it. He
Awesome.
definitely is. I can't stress enough that if it wasn't for him, I probably wouldn't have became a truck driver, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's awesome. So to date, from a transportation professional driver operating perspective, what would you say has been the hardest challenge you've had to overcome so far?
Um, that's a loaded question. There's way too many answers. There's not just one. First of all, I had my daughter when I first got my license, and so that was a huge challenge. I got my license and found out a couple months later I was pregnant with her. So March of 2005, I officially got my class one, and then it was I got a job offer right away and had to turn it down because it was hauling gravel, and I first of all wasn't really aware of what I was in for. I was told I wouldn't have children, so I was like, off I go. I kind of had this idea in my head maybe I'd go do cross Canada trucking. So the hardest thing about trucking, I would have to say, was finding support systems for that. The other thing too was I was also really young and I dealt with a lot of attitudes. There was still a very small amount of women in the industry when I come into it. Mind you, our community here is super supportive. The men here that know me have known me my whole life have always been super supportive. I have this amazing like family of truckers. Um, the other thing being is the unknown. So I found a lot of people tried to pull the wool over my eyes because they just assumed that I was less than intelligent. So when it came to going into new jobs, pay scales, equipment, they assumed I didn't know anything. So when I'd start picking equipment apart and getting fussy about things that needed to be fixed, they kind of looked at me like, well, who told you that? Because they didn't understand that I actually had mechanical knowledge. So that's one of the biggest challenges. And also, I'm going to be right up front and tell you, sexual harassment. It is there. And I don't believe that it's ever going to go away. You're always going to deal with it on some level. Um, and unfortunately, in trucking, depending on where you're at, there's just no human resources department. There really isn't unless you're working for a big company. So um, you really got to watch yourself. You got to protect yourself and keep your head up and be smart. And if you don't know something, don't be afraid to ask questions. For Pete's sake, like that's all I can say. Even with men, I'm not just saying with women as a new, if you're getting into it new, um, do your homework.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And that's a good point. It's an unfortunate point. And I do agree from, again, I haven't experienced it myself, but it's all I've known as well as the industry and certain things that you see. But when you look at stats and you look at carrier sizes, majority of them are small carriers where you're right. Maybe they don't have an HR department. Maybe the owner does 19 things at 19 times because they have to.
Yep.
And that's not an excuse, but it's a challenge that there has to be a resolution for, because I see that with obviously women in industry. I'm sure it happens with men in industry, but also with newer Canadians in industry, with just, yeah, race is still a big thing that we're trying to overcome. And it's, yeah, all in all, it's a group effort, but it's nice to know you have a community around you where you are, that you know that I can call anyone and I have protection from a support standpoint, from I have a blown tire and I just can't change it standpoint because it's the inner axle. Like, you have help. And I think that's something where you've earned the respect, but also you've asked the questions. And when, yeah, I really disagree with that comment. If you have a question, ask. Like, it's not a dumb question. It's a legitimate, hey, I need to know this and I don't know this yet. So I think that's a really good takeaway. With that said, then what would you say has been, from a driving perspective, the highlight of your career so far?
Um, all the places I've gotten to see and the people that
Nice.
I've met. The people,
Yes.
actually. So
Yes.
I find that trucking people are a different breed of people.
Yes.
And I don't say that in a way that it means you have to be a certain way. Uh, yeah, it's again to me, it's at this point, it's a family. So if you don't have a family and you decide you want to be a truck driver, you get in with a good company, you will have a family.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
Yes.
everything surrounding it. So not just truckers, dispatchers, you know, your mechanic. If you get a good mechanic, you get a relationship with them. I still have my mechanic down here in Williams Lake at Freightliner. He worked on the junk I used to drive. We got to be really good pals because I spent hours in that shop here in Williams Lake Freightliner, and now we park our truck there. And so it's come full circle, and they're like, "You're back," and I'm like, "I'm back, but different."
Yes.
So people don't
Yes.
forget you when you um so having a good attitude right off the start, and then that really helps your knowledge and your skill set, because when you have a good attitude, people want to teach you things. They
Yeah.
really do. And I can't stress that enough. So if you come into it with a bad attitude, with a chip on your shoulder, people are going to be like, get lost.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's from all sides of the operation too. From the brand new dispatcher, and they feel entitled. It's like, no, have a good attitude. Let's work collectively together and watch what happens. And yeah, I totally agree. The attitude is key, and humility is key. Being empathetic is key, because at the end of the day, we're all human. And I like that to you, you could really dial it down to something that I really say is my mission, is helping people. Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, we're all people, we're all the same, and we have food to put on the tables for our families. We obviously want to be successful in our careers, and we have an industry that's the heartbeat of our nation. And because of that, and because of the fact that we're people, we're impactors. And I like that you can highlight that, because obviously in your newest career as a driver trainer, you're impacting people to a point where you're helping people establish careers and lives. Maybe it's second career, maybe it's first. Out of, I just finished high school and I meet the age limit and I can go get my class one, whatever it is, but you're really in that space. So it's nice that for you, that's where you gravitate towards in your journey this far, is the people, because now you have one of the most crucial roles that I think anyone in our industry has as a driver trainer. Is you're uplifting, you're constantly in their head saying, you got this, tweak this, try this, how about this. Super impactful. And yeah, it's funny that you talk about the mechanics too, because I was the same, but we were at James Western Star in Kelowna when I had my outfit, and man, we could have been there sometimes 10 times a day, and you just
Yeah.
get to know people, and you're like, they're some of the smartest people around. They're really good at pulling wrenches and problem solving, and you're like, man, I didn't know that, I didn't know I could do that. So yeah, it's really nice to know that you've established those relationships too.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, you have to have it because you don't want to be, or even let's just say your loader operator. I always tell new drivers, do not make enemies with the loaderman.
Hmm.
It will wreck your day.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're on your second lunch break. Yep. It's 10 in the morning. Yep.
Look in the mirror and your log trailer sitting in the bush, and you're like, what did I do?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, can you walk us through your mindset then? I guess, at what point did you think, okay, I don't want to be a professional driver per se, as in full time over the road, if it's in the bush, if it's Bella Cool as an interesting cat on its own. So, how, I guess, yeah, what took place for you to say, you know what, I still want to be in the industry, still want to impact people, I just want to do it differently? And then when did you come across like a position with driver trainer? Did you know the owner of the school, or how did you make that decision for yourself? And what's it been like this far?
Um, it started a long time ago. I actually had just started driving, and my driver trainer that I still talk to, Jackson Steele, he's an amazing man. He um he had recommended me to the school he was working for. I hadn't even been driving that long and said this girl would be an amazing trainer. That was over 10 years ago. And I remember getting the email going, "No.
Mm.
Why would you even ask me for that, right?" Because I was just like, I didn't see my potential. Apparently he did. Okay. So that's the thing is, we don't always have the ability to recognize our own potential. It takes somebody else doing it for us. Also, it was natural to me. Any job I was in, anybody I ever worked for, seeing that I had an ability to communicate with people on a level that was very easy for them to understand, because it was how I wanted to be communicated with and what
Yes.
I needed. So I needed to be shown, sometimes literally in writing, sometimes I needed to be showed practical, or both. And I won't let go of a topic or what I'm trying to learn until I've got it. So when I would get people fresh out of driver training school on the old system, because now we are in the new system, um, they would say, "Oh, I went to truck driving school for 20 hours." And they would come to me. They still couldn't shift. They didn't know anything about load securement. They didn't know how to throw a chain. Everybody in the industry, super frustrated with all of it. So I was like, why are these schools not teaching this stuff? Well, it came down to dollars and cents. So, how much was a person willing to spend to get a class one? Let's do the math. You want to
Yes.
go out there and take a job where you can make for anywhere from 60 to over $100,000 a year, and you're not paying university level education. This is an industry that there is so many different levels, and I can't stress that enough. That you level up, level up, level up. You can't expect somebody's going to come right out the gate and know everything they need to know. That's not even realistic. So I would always get really frustrated, and I would get these people in my workplace, and I'd be like, "I'm just going to help you." Because you could see they were utterly terrified I had tons of people that I could go to and ask for help, Josh, like my dad, anybody around my dad. I had like five people on speed dial. I could pick up the phone and be like, I'm freaking out. I'm on bad roads. What do I do? They would help me. So I decided I was going to be that person for other people. Now, mind you, it's not always welcomed when you forget to ask. I've had a few people that were not too happy with me when I was like, hey man, do you need help? Forgetting that I'm a female and sometimes that crushes the male ego. Let me tell you what. So, yeah, that slapped me in the forehead more times than I can count, but um, that and also my health. So, a little bit of a backstory. 2014, I was in a work accident and fell off of a train car and suffered a bad TBI. Neck, back, uh, bone graft in my face. And so, ever since then, I've had long term. So, I had post concussion syndrome. I actually didn't drive for a year and a half. I couldn't drive my car. I couldn't read and retain information. There was a lot of things that happened to me. And so now I have arthritis and I have a bunch of things going on. Okay, so cognitively I'm fine because I took the time to heal. However, I struggle from chronic fatigue. So the hours that you'd have to put into trucking was not serving me, and also I'm a single parent. So I decided that I wanted to be home more with my daughter. And so I made a lot of really it was actually this spring that kind of kicked me in the pants. I had worked really, really hard all winter. We were doing bushwork and we were on night shifts, and I was throwing chains 4 and 5 times a day, and didn't know also that I have a touch of apnea, which isn't a full blown case of apnea, but had no idea I had it. And I was driving down the road one day, and I was all of a sudden felt like my eyes were going to roll back in my head, and I pulled the truck over and I was like, what's going on? And I got out of the truck and I leaned against the steer tire and I sat there for like 45 minutes and was like having a conversation with myself literally, because it's like, you're exhausted. Like, I actually was exhausted. And I went into the doctor and got checked. It turned out I'd had a mild stroke. So, yeah.
Wow.
So this spring was the kicker for me. So I went through 2 months of gauntlet of testing and everything else. And he's like, it's not your heart, and you have a sleeping disorder. So I was literally going nonstop on no sleep and didn't realize it. So I took time off, and that was when I got all my physicals done and made sure my health was in check, because you have to, you've got a class one. So I got all my paperwork filled out, and I had like pages of tests that they did on me. And I'm like, it's time. So I applied for my funding and I got it. And I was scheduled to go start at Taylor Pro in Kelowna in June, and the wait list kind of went. And I'm really happy now that it worked out, because they were in fire season and I wouldn't have wanted to be down there for that. So September of this year, I went for 5 full weeks and did all my instructors training. And while I was in school, I was getting nailed with job offers. And I still did not understand that there's a huge shortfall of instructors. And now with the new Class 1 MELT program, it's mandatory. So we need Class 1 instructors, and I can't stress that enough. Need. So, and yeah, I kind of off tracked. I've totally forgot what the initial question was. I'm not going to lie.
It's perfect. It's perfect. Yeah, this is exactly where I wanted to go. Is how did you? Part of it was a mental decision. Um, well, I won't even say sorry to hear of what happened. I'm glad it's okay now.
Yeah.
And yeah, that would have been tough for sure. And knowing that you've then been able to redirect, it's actually a pivotal moment. It didn't happen on the best of the best scenario, but look where you are now, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And yeah, because of that, now you're in a position where, like, we've talked a few times on the messenger, we've chatted before, and I hear the passion and I can see it in your face when you're talking about impacting people. That's when your face really lights up, is when you're talking about the impact on people. And I think that's a really awesome, it's a trait as a person. It's also a skill set, because not everyone, as you know, knows how to talk to people in different environments under pressure and stuff. So knowing that all of your experience got you to where you are today, how have you found the training environment instead of just the operating environment? Like, has it been a big learning curve, not just trying to take the wheel, or have you been like, no, this is where I'm thriving? Like, how have you, I guess, navigated that so far?
I'm still learning, obviously. Um, it's been mentally exhausting for me because I thought, oh man, I know this stuff, but now you have to figure out how you're supposed to teach it, and everybody learns differently.
Yes, yes,
Everybody learns so differently.
yes,
Um, Adam and I, so my boss, Adam Cox at Caribou Driver Training in Williams Lake, which is where I'm working, he's been amazing to me and super kind and patient and has held my hand every step of the way. If I need him, he's there right now, which is really, I believe, what somebody needs when they come into this is someone that can just help them. Just like I want to help people, but he needs to help me to help people. And the hardest thing for me is not to overcoach. So it's like, you know this because you've trained. You do the climb. You're like, okay, we're learning, 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 learning. And then you hit the top, the first little mountain, and you're like, oh, okay, so we've kind of got things figured out now. And then it's like, so it's all the assessing. So it's like, learn, assess, learn, assess, learn, assess. The cool thing is now with the new program is that we actually have the time to do that. So the things that the truckers get to learn now at the forefront is amazing. And I won't get into detail too hard because I'll get like way off track. But they're going to know things that I never knew. Um, there was tons that my dad taught me, tons that Jackson taught me, but there weren't mandatory key points that had to be taught. It was kind of at the school's discretion and how they worked with the student and how much time they had with the student. So the biggest thing for me that I find great is I'm really glad I waited until Melt come into effect because I don't know that I would have been comfortable literally being rented out by the hour, which sounds absolutely awful when you say that out loud, but that's actually the truth of it. Because somebody could, you had packages you could purchase, which you still can with class 3. Um, I feel like there's things that they have to know. So in lieu of all of this, Adam and I are changing things so that there's more things being integrated into class 3 for people because, and now we're making it so we're not willing to teach for less than a certain amount of hours. We're just not willing to do it anymore because people don't learn enough. Unless they come to us and say, I've been already driving dump truck for however long off road and I just need to figure out how I'm going to get my license. That's one thing. And that person's already got experience. But if you get somebody who comes to you and thinks they can learn how to drive a truck in 30 hours when they've never touched one, that to me is not even real. Like, it's not realistic. So, um, also, the biggest thing for me that I have found is trying to demonstrate, coach, and portray as part of our training. I'm really good at the demonstrating. Um, the thing I'm struggling with is when you're on road and you've got a student that's overwhelmed because you're trying to help them as they're on road, especially teaching in the winter, um, is trying to find that way to get through to them. So there's a lot of pre-planning. You've got to constantly be asking them questions at the beginning of every lesson because if you think there's a hole somewhere where you might have to deal with something out on the road, you need to tackle it before you get out there because not a lot of people are going to hear anything that's going in their ear while they're trying to figure out how to get that truck in gear. It just isn't
yes,
there.
yes,
Like, it's like trying to teach a kid how to walk and tell them to drink water and smoke. I don't like, you know what I mean?
yep, yep, yep,
It's like when a
absolutely.
toddler's learning how to walk. You have to kind of go back to juvenile like learning tactics. It's so sounds so silly. And then when you get anybody that's over the age of 35, they're
Yes,
so habitual and they've been in a chances are in a career long term already and they know what they know.
yes,
It's the constant reminder that it's adult learning and you are in charge of your own learning and I'm not your high school teacher.
yes,
So when you
yes,
get attitudes, it's like, okay, let's reiterate the fact that you want to be here. That you
yes,
chose this for yourself.
yes,
So I absolutely will not put up with abuse.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Well, and you're not training to pass a test anymore, which I think was the ultimate goal before is, yay, you pass, see ya. It's like, no, you want to be successful on the road. That's why mandatory training was implemented. Like started out east and navigated its way here is because you need to be a professional out the gate. And you're right. I like that you mentioned leveling up because that's often missed from an employer standpoint where it's like, well, you have your license. It's like, yeah, you can only learn so much, even in 100. How many hours is 140 hours in BC?
It's 140 minimum.
Minimum. Okay, yeah, that's
Yeah.
still not very much time to when how much time is spent on even identifying what is a defect and identifying how do you, well, if there's a minor defect or it's a major defect, or is it how do you shift, how do you downshift under load on a grade, like all of those things, like it takes a long time to learn that. And then yeah, adding cargo securement, adding hours of service, adding documentation, adding customer demands, like there's a lot there where I like that you use the term leveling up because that's exactly, I think, the other half of the equation. Maybe if we do a big pie where carrier still has the responsibility to train as well, like it's carrier specific training though. It's what do you expect with your customers, what do you expect with your cargo securement, like does your cargo securement practices even meet and exceed the law? Like there's a lot there that again often it's missed. And then it's, well, what training school did you go to? It's like it's not about that. Like
Well, and
melt is
that's,
across the board.
yeah, and exactly, you hit the nail on the head, Josh, because I got into a big argument with my dad about this. Dad's old school. He drove his work truck to his road test by himself, drove it around town, and they gave him a license.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's accelerate 40 years. And I'm like, that's nice for you, Dad. That's really nice. Back then, you didn't have 8 axles and 9 axles. Like, come on.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
we, and these extended B trains that are 92 feet long going down the road. So, um, I just, the thing is with the employers, you said it right there. One thing I would like to do in conjunction, kind of like you with your side hustle, which I really admire, is I would like to be able to help employers. So, assessing. So, at the forefront, what employers should be doing when they hire a new driver is assessing them.
Yes.
Can you please go out in the yard and back up here? Can you please go out and chain up and show me how you chain up? Can you please show me how you do your pre-trip? Book a time, interview them properly, and then decide, okay, this guy needs help here. He needs to do this. Instead of pointing the finger at the training facilities, how the heck are we supposed to train them in the application that you're hiring for? In the area where we're training, there's people want to go right into a log truck. Well, let me tell you what. Unless you can find somebody that's willing to hold your hand for, I would say, no less than 2 weeks, and that's if you're a keen learner, um, that's trucking university. And so is oil field. So
Yes.
if you're going to train in those specific areas, those are key questions we ask our students. What do you want to do when you're done? We do aptitude testing. We ask a ridiculous amount of questions. I had one student go, shouldn't we have already done aptitude testing? And I'm like, well, you would think, but we're doing it now because I want to know what you know already. What are you keen to learn? We have one guy over here that can pull wrenches and fix his own trucks, and one person that's really, really like loves the systems and like, so we had 4 full-time melt students all at once. Adam and I are doing this. We'd never taught melt yet. So I just told everybody at the forefront, this is new. We're still finding all the errors at ICB because they do. Everybody makes mistakes. We are trying to fix everything as we go. So please have patience with us because we're working really, really hard. Um, I'm comfortable with all the students that just passed through our school, and I'm going to say that with absolute pride because they all passed on their first try. And the nice thing was I was able to tell them at the beginning, Josh, was when you get through our assessments, that test is going to be so easy. You're going to be like, wow, why did I do so well on it? Because our assessments are harder than ICBC's assessments. They are harder. We have 2 assessments where there's Zero demerits allowed, zero errors. That's chaining up and coupling and uncoupling. So and there's 13 assessments they have to go through. It's, and it excites me because I feel like when they leave, they'll actually have a shot at going out there and they have full contact with us. We're like, here's our emails, here's our phone numbers. If you need us, you call us when you're gone. We're not sending them out there and saying good luck,
Yes. Yes.
because to me that's all kinds of wrong.
I was going to ask, what do you feel is your biggest motivation in this space? And I think that would definitely be one of them, is your student success, which it's
my
nice.
my motivation is you guys are gonna, everybody out there, I'm just gonna tell you this right now. In the next year or two, you're gonna really start seeing the results of the new drivers coming out of driving school,
Yes.
because they actually have skills now
Yes.
that
Yes.
have been assessed and tested. If there's any issues whatsoever with it's kind of a stigma. It's like driving schools are horrible. No, well, I can't say all driving schools are created equal. That's for darn sure.
Yeah.
Um, I had a really good success even 18 years ago. So,
Yes.
um, going forward, the employers need to understand that they can't just expect that a person's going to come to them fresh off the press and know what they need to do to drive a log truck or go run a low bed, or like almost all the short haul or town applications in and around the Caribou area. It's hard work.
Yes.
So you could go to Vancouver and go to a driving school so that you could go get your license down there and come back up here and want to work. Now, why anybody would do that, I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a clue. You're going to go down there and learn to put chains on dry pavement? I took my kids, I call them, out and made them chain up. And I made them chain up and they couldn't move the truck. I'm like, get at it, because you're going to go out there one day and this is going to happen and I'm not going to be here.
Yes. Yes.
So, yeah. And I don't care if you get mad. If you want to get mad and blow up, go walk it off. I'll stand here and
Yes.
wait.
Yes.
Don't care, because you're going to get out there and I'm going to guarantee you there's going to be days out there on the road where you're going to be like, I don't want to do this anymore. And you're going to be yelling at the side of the truck and you're going to be having a really good conversation with yourself.
Yeah. It's funny when I hate tire chains. Oh, hate them.
Why? They're
For,
fun.
well, when obtained is a bad word. I took, I can't remember. Well, there was air brake course aside. It was 8 hours of training. I leveled up. I went from just driving a non-air commercial vehicle with my class 5. Then I got my class 3. Then went for my class 1. And there was no tire chains training. It was all on dry pavement, besides maybe some rain. I was strategic in that regard too. The first time having to put it on, and I'm like, you want me to do what? Like, how do you, like, oh, it was a mess. And I almost broke my finger. And I'm like, nope, I hate it. I hate it. And just now something in my brain, I don't know. It's like a PTSD or something, tire chains. But when you're in those environments, though, you're right. I needed to put them on. I cannot climb this hill. And yeah, it was this. So yeah, those that would picture themselves, maybe you're listening to this and you're like, well, I wanted to get my class 1, but I hate tire chains. Yeah, you're going to want to listen though, because you're right, Angela. When you're in an environment where the truck, you just can't move, and you will not move until they're on, you're going to want to say, oh, well, I wish they would have trained me that and been patient with me and allowed me to kick tires and storm off to come back with a little more of a level head. But that's a really good approach on a terrible topic. I hate it.
Chains up here are not just used for lifting off. They're used to get down hills. You got to put drag chains on log trailers. You got a quad that's chasing you down the hill, or I should say driving you down the hill.
Yes. Yes.
You're going to want a drag chain.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the thing is that I could make it so you don't hate chains. That's the fun part, is we did. My one student told me, he said, you just made it look so effortless. I'm like, I'm going to tell you something about being a girl in this industry. And you have a 250-pound man walk up and grabs chains like the Hulk and goes boom over the tire like they don't weigh anything, and they're 8 mil trigs. And you go to lift him and you're like, I'm going to get a hernia. Okay, there's a way to do it. So just tell them you got to work smarter, not harder.
Right.
And if it takes you a couple minutes longer, who cares?
Right.
Who
Yeah.
cares?
Yep.
And if you're having a struggle, step back and look at it and go, why is this not working?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So it's not about time, it's about being safe and doing your job properly. And I guarantee your boss is going to be happy when you get his $400,000 worth of jewelry home at the end of the day in one piece. I'll tell
Yes.
you what. And there's all kinds of techniques you can learn out in the real world once you get out there, but find somebody that's willing to take you under their wing because you'll need it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree. So when you're training students, something that I ask the question often when I think of legacy, and I don't think of it as when we're dead, what we're remembered for. I'm sure that's part of your legacy. I like thinking of legacy as every day you have the opportunity to impact a life. And it could be you enter a room, you interact, you leave a room. How did you leave that room? So are you thinking about the impact that you're having on your students? Maybe not in the moment, every moment, but maybe when you reflect on your drive home after the end of like a long day, are you thinking about that impact that you're having like on the day to day with your students? Is that important to you?
Oh, yeah, it's very important to me. I'm very self-critical. So, most women in the industry are super self-critical and they will internalize because they don't want anybody to see them get upset or cry. So for me, it's important for me, my students to have respect for me first and foremost. Is so I like to build that level of respect with each other. So, let's have a conversation and sit and talk at the beginning of every lesson. How are you? Did you get enough sleep? Are you feeling okay today? What do you need out of today? What do you feel you need to work on? Because it's essentially their lesson. It's their life and it's adult learning. They're not kids. So you can't treat them like you can't have an attitude. You can't come in there going, "Oh, I know this and you don't." Well, duh, they're there to learn. And I found that I've actually had some feedback over the years from people that have gone through training schools that said they just felt like they couldn't do anything right. So I don't want people to feel like that with me. So, yeah.
That's important. And I think about that too. And the we're obviously in different roles, different lifestyles, totally different terrain. Multiple you got multiple obviously snow. I don't have very much snow yet, all that good stuff, but I think about that often. So just as we kind of come to a close though, first off, I really wanted to say thank you. The I really appreciate your honesty. I appreciate your humility. Where I've talked to enough people in my shorter life as well. We're both younger than some, where they claim they know it all, and I'm glad we don't live with that perception.
No.
And I like the fact that yeah, we're able to really just use our passion for people to help. So just yeah, as we kind of come to a close, this has been an awesome conversation. I really appreciate just everything you've shared. If people were interested in picking your brain, asking for mentorship, obviously going to your training school, are you comfortable with people contacting you? And if so, where can they get in contact with you?
Oh, 100%. So, Caribou Driver Training in Williams Lake, BC. And my email, I'll give that to you, Josh, so you can publish it in the podcast, my work email. If they have any questions about anything, they can always contact us. We have websites and Facebook pages that are under construction. So that'll be all new because we're trying to make changes to all of that. It all needs to be refreshed with the new programs. So, but I have no issues with that whatsoever. And going back to mentoring women, that's was my biggest passion. So there's a couple of us lady trainers out there. It's still not a lot. I welcome anybody that wants to just talk to me, even if they can't come to me, they can get a hold of me. So, yeah.
Appreciate that. Yeah, I really appreciate that, Angela. And I just really appreciate your passion for people and that you're people focused and that's impacting our industry. And yeah, Melt is one part of the conversation, but I'd say you as a person and the fact that throughout all of your experiences, that's where you can really dial into is the impact you're having on people. I think that's just incredible. So I just, yeah, again, I really appreciate you hopping on the podcast. And yeah, this was a wonderful conversation that there's so much value here. So thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. Okay. Have a wonderful day.
Yeah.
Take care. Angela, honestly, thank you so much for all the value that you shared today, to sharing your journey and your story. I really value your passion to not only help our industry get better, but also to really help your students succeed. And I believe your mission, you're going to impact so many lives. So, again, I really encourage you to connect with Angela and Caribou Driver Training School if you're looking to obtain your commercial driver's license in the Caribou area. But also, again, if you would like us to speak with someone that's trustworthy, that offer mentorship, just honestly shoot the breeze and just have support. So again, thank you so much, Angela, for your time today. Really do appreciate it. And before you leave, again, ask you like this episode, subscribe to our channel, but share it out. Share out the values. That way we can continue to create a pivotal impact. So as always, let's create a pivotal impact. Bye.